My names are Josphat Murila between 1974 to 1987. I am the chairperson for the Legends Group in Kenya.
You will have played in the Secapa Cup. It changed from its previous competition and the one before that. What I want to ask you about is the first tournament, the Gossage Cup. Are you aware of the Gossage Cup and its history?
Yes, I am aware of the Gossage Cup in history. It started off in 1926.
How important is that competition to the development of African football?
Yeah, the importance of that tournament is it created an awareness of sports in the region. That's one. Two, it brought up people to understand their cultural situations and developments. And three, yes, I'm just trying to say the tournament created a lot of excitement in the young people in the sport.
That's in the region of East Africa as a whole.
East Africa.
Yeah. Now, it expanded to cover Central Africa as well as East Africa. How important was that to the development of football in East Africa?
One, it created a lot of space of players coming together and also an awareness of regional integrity, integration.
Just know if you are aware of this or not, but the record holder for the most number of goals in a single Secapa Cup tournament is a Zambian who also holds the record for the most number of goals in international football by an African. His name is Godfrey Chitalu. Did you ever play against him?
Yeah, I played against him 1978, 79, and 80.
Now, in 1978, Godfrey Chitalu scored a remarkable 11 goals in just 5 matches. Do you remember him from that tournament at all? Because you would have played against him. Kenya played against Zambia in their run to the final. That's Zambia's run to the final. Did you play in the match against Zambia?
No.
You didn't. So you wouldn't have played against him in 1978? Because Kenya played once, I believe.
79, I played against him.
Mm-hmm. Right. So in the 1978, the one you didn't play, Kenya lost 9-0 against Zambia, and Chitalu scored a few in that particular match. Is the reason Kenya lost so badly that you weren't playing in that match?
I could not really comment that's to be the reason, but actually what we looked at, I can look at is the actual game itself. I think the analysis were different from what actually happened on the ground.
Okay, why do you think Kenya lost so badly against Zambia? Were they that good, Kenya that bad, or is there some other reason?
I could state basically that at that particular time, we cannot actually state because I cannot state because the players were good. They played their first 2 games correctly and enthusiastically. But when it came to this last game, what happened, even the coach could not explain. Then the coach was Jonathan Niva, the late.
Okay. Now, obviously, this tournament has been going on nearly 100 years. How important is it that Sakafa and Kenya and Uganda in particular celebrate the 100th anniversary of this tournament, beginning with the Gossage Cup?
Very important is a roadmap for the football development in the region. That's one. Two, it can show the essence and the value that the people of East Africa put in the sport, because having played the first one, it can now show a road until now. What have they done?
Kenya hasn't yet reached the World Cup finals, and it's not really performed in the Africa Cup of Nations, but it has done reasonably well in the Sakafa Cup. Why do you think that is? Is the Sakafa Cup a grooming ground for Kenyan talent, or should it become more of a method of developing Kenyan talent?
One, I could rule out talent, because talent is developed. It is something you can create and move up with it. But I think the actual reasons may be the administrative roles that are being worked out to make that talent, prosper.
Josphat, Kenya has not achieved its potential in football in the way that it has in athletics. First of all, why do you think Kenya has done better in athletics than it has in football? And secondly, what do you think is required for Kenya to announce its presence in the Africa Cup of Nations and also the World Cup?
I could say Kenya is on the standard, on the periphery of coming up to mark its mark in the international scene as we proceed on with the new talent search procedures they have created. I think the anomaly was the situation that was developed, that we have been running different situations on different levels and come to match it at the national level. But since you have started up the academy level and moving up to the other levels to perfection in the sport, I believe that Kenya is going to rise up, especially coming in the next 2 years. We shall see Kenya in the World Cup.
Do you think Kenya requires the development of academies within the country in order to develop the talent that it has at a young age?
That's the most required issue that we need to deal with, especially through our football structures.
How do you think this will happen? And should it happen as part of the legacy of the centenary of the Gossage Cup?
It's a matter that can be under discussion, and especially with the current federation, because they are the ones who can now own up and say, this is what we want to change. And because of this effect of Gossage, we want to align ourselves to this level of development. And from that point now, we can move one step higher from where we are.
The Gossage Cup, as we've mentioned, was the first international tournament in Africa's football history. How important was it in the development of CAF itself in 1956 and 57, in the Africa Cup of Nations in 1957, and its development into a continent that is capable of competing in the World Cup? For example, like for many, many years, it didn't deliver, but last time in 2022, Morocco reached the semi-finals. Does that set the scene for even better performances by African countries in international competition? And to what extent does the Gossage Cup deserve credit for that?
One is Gossage Cup opened. That's the first strategy that it did to the African continent, the sport itself. Now, when it came up in 1950s, remember, these were the times when all the African nations, each one was going on for the liberalization and, being nations. So it's at this interpretation between the nations. And when it came up in 1959, I do believe that the Gossage Cup and the African nations saw the reality and built it up to another different layer of the sport. In East Africa, it came up to East Africa Challenge, and in West Africa, it had a different name. So from that development and that creation of players in this region, which created more players to start going out, and especially when it started in 1972, we had the AFCON in the African region where Kenya participated first, its first AFCON tournament in 1972. And I believe from that level, personally, Kenya should have been doing better than what it's doing now.
In 1978, Uganda, the beaten finalist in the first Gossage Cup, reached the final of AFCON, and they lost to one of the greatest African teams of all time, Ghana. And they sort of developed, but they never went on. You never got them another East African team reaching the final. Why do you think that is? And also, what credit does the Gossage Cup deserve for developing Uganda to the point that it was able to challenge for the Africa Cup of Nations?
One issue that Uganda has been, and we have to credit them for it, is they have maintained their football franchise since they started the Gossage up to this moment. They have never changed from one situation to another. That's why when they went to the final in 1959, it became a tussle for even the other East African teams to compete with them. However, locally, Kenya became a powerhouse. But this development of Gossage, what I have just looked at is it created that awareness that we have talent. And we have not picked from that talent. We have not created another step from that talent to go to the world powers.
Is there anything else you'd like to add about the Gossage Cup and Kenya's contribution to it?
My desire, I would like to say people should now sit around and create themselves to know that there was Gossage Cup, then there's the East African Cup, then there's the AFCON Cup being developed. This is a statement that we can say from Gossage, we develop sports in the whole of Africa. Therefore, it's good for it to be celebrated and be one of the specific attributes for football development in Africa.
Josphat, thank you very much.